I just wanted to quickly introduce the two speakers. There is Eric Sassono. He is a PhD student, and he's also a film critic, and he works for the BBC. And this is Dr. Felicia Hughes Freeland, who is affiliated with SOAS, and she has done long years of research in Indonesia, mainly on Indonesian dance, but she has also an interest in Indonesian documentary film, and she's going to talk about women in Indonesian documentary film. Unfortunately, May Adadol, who was also in the program, she can't make it today, which is really a shame, but her son fell ill with tonsil infection, and he has a high fever, and he can't be here, unfortunately. And then we have Tito. Tito is on Skype. And he's also a PhD student at Goldsmiths University. And he is in Indonesia at the moment. So yeah, that's why he's on Skype. And he's going to show, well, I'm going to screen a film later, a work that he's working on. It's a documentary and also a film on Indonesian dance. So I hope you enjoy the discussion.
Hello everyone, thank you for coming on Sunday. I know this might be a special event for you to make it on Sunday, and we didn't really have any arrangement who should go first for this presentation, and we still have a discussion. But I'm going to talk about much more general idea and the overview about the Indonesian documentary film. So I think I should go first, and then Felicia can jump into something much more specific on the documentary film in Indonesia. My presentation would be the recent development of Indonesian documentary film, and this is the part of the subject of my PhD research in King's College in London, where I'm trying to find the conception of public and publicness behind the documentary film development in Indonesia since 1998. As you know that in 1998, Indonesia has undergone a major political change, and since then the media environment has changed drastically, and so many things happened since then. But the question remains the same. Is it the main question of the current situation is it really changed? Is there any what we call as rupture in Indonesian current situation, or is it just the continuation of what has happened in the past? And I don't really want to see it in that way, in terms of this thing still going on the same, and we have different kind of situation, because I don't really want to put some sort of essentialism in the history of Indonesia. But I think it is important to highlight some features of Indonesian media policy and film policy during the new order of Indonesia. And actually, we have Tito's working on the keyboard now. Tito, we can hear you. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Tito. Okay, basically I will talk about some general overview of the production and the production model, formats, and I will touch also about some of the themes and the circulations of Indonesian documentary film, and basically this will be the main chunk of my my project. Talking about the film policy in New Order Indonesia, 1966 through 1998, I'd like to quote an Australian scholar, Krishna Sen, who's been studying Indonesian films since decades ago, and still continue until now. And he's also the chair of Indonesian studies in in one of the universities in Australia. I forgot which universities. Sorry. I think this encapsulates the situations of Indonesian film policy back in New Order during 1966 to 1998. New Order Indonesian policy is caught between the nationalist rhetoric of protecting Indonesian culture from foreign incursions and the restrictive policing of creative options for Indonesian filmmakers. Thus, the positioning of cinema within the state apparatus emphasizes its media information influence and hence security and propaganda dimension rather than film's artistic or creative dimension. The nationalist rhetoric is very important during the New Order because that's the main thing that's been propagated throughout the nations by Indonesian New Order, and they do it according to another Indonesian scholar, Ariel Herianto. They do this nationalist rhetoric not only with a propaganda machine, but also combined with state violence and terrorism, meaning that there are censorship, of course, also control over many institutions, including films institutions, related to production, distribution, and circulation, consumption of films in Indonesia. The control was really tight. Includes submission of film script before it's screened to the Ministry of Information, and the censorship guideline is also very strict at the time, and saying that the guideline has two codes of ethics to avoid all reference to social conflicts or tension in Indonesia. Therefore, films are to be banned or excised if they are deemed to be able to destroy the unity of religions in Indonesia and social harmony, harm the development of national consciousness, or exploit feelings of ethnicity, religion, or ancestry, or incite social tensions, or even arouse sentiments of ethnicity, religion, and race, and engender social tension, including those between the rich and poor, as one former head of intelligence explained at the seminar at the censorship board. I quoted that from Sen as well in his same writing. The censorship code is very strict in terms of trying to put the harmony up front to be represented throughout the nation, using many kind of circulation tools, including mostly the Indonesian television at the time and cinema as well. For a documentary case, it was the Indonesian television who's been in the front line in distributing and circulating documentary films. Talking about the television in Indonesia, it could be the television in Indonesia can be understood as part of Indonesia's national culture project, the shorthand of the Philip Kitley. He's a researcher in Ohio State University. The shorthand expression for a range of state-sponsored and directed activities designed to legitimate symbolically Indonesian national culture identity. And this cultural identity is very important in terms of giving the overview of Indonesian documentary film at the time. So basically, I will go now to the production and the production model. The production of the documentary film was dominated by state-owned television, the TVRI, Televisi Republik Indonesia, and PPFN, Pusat Perusahaan Film Negara, or state-owned film company, and all the productions coming from these two organizations, two institutions. But there are also a few numbers of directors, mainly from the film schools, which was established in 1971. That's the first film school, and the only until some times ago. There are some notable names such as David Bransi, Hadi Purnomo, and Johan Trangi, and they worked together in a not only doing documentary but also experimental films, especially Bransi, who's considered to be one of the most important names in experimental films in Indonesia. And Trangi as well. He doesn't really have any space to produce, so he works for, as you can see in the production model, they provide footage for foreign broadcasters. That's also one of their channels in making the documentary. Trangi also worked for the BBC and NHK, the Japanese broadcaster, and some German TVs, sending them footages based on the commercial requests from those institutions. And that's also another important name, just Alwi, which he collects historical footages, and none of them, nothing really released. It's footages from pre-war Indonesian films, Indonesian Independence War, and many others. For the production model of the documentary film is dominated by TVRI, and it's done in the TVRI in-house productions, and also some of the films are commissioned by state institution or quasi-state institution, and footage for foreign broadcast, as I mentioned. The formats, I think it's important since the censorship is very strong in glorifying the national culture and national identity, and also national development. This become the main staple for the Indonesian documentary at the time. What the government wants is to produce state propaganda films, mainly on national development, the glorification of economic success of the national development, the Gelora Pembangunan series. Usually it's short documentaries, 5 to 20 minutes, depicting the success of development, the Revolusi Hijau, the Green Revolution, construction of a big infrastructure, and so on and so forth. And also the public service information on certain issues such as health issues, the government program, family planning, transmigration, and these, especially for these types of film, Indonesians scholars, Indonesian filmmakers have the unique name. They call it film pass, or black film, because mostly it tells stories about epidemic and trying to educate people on how to deal with epidemic or things like that. And besides that, there's also a scenic travelogue and encounter with obscure ethnic groups considered to be the less advantaged people, has to be represented in national media as part of the national culture. It's very, very essentialist and very, very putting the ethnic groups into essential and familiar others of the Indonesian. And if you talk about the circulation, it's very, very limited. The TVRI and some of the films, some of the short documentaries, especially the Gelora Pembangunan, were used for the opening for an attraction in movie screening and open air cinema or layar tancap. Because during the New Order, we had 3,000 cinemas, including in small cities and towns and villages even. But now we only have 700, but that's a different story. Every time they screen film, it's mandatory for them to screen short films on national, the Gelora Pembangunan series. Okay, and as you know that this is big things happened in 1998, where the New Order, Suharto being toppled from his position, he resigned, and then Indonesia changed drastically into one of the freest media environment in Asia. And now we have 10 national private TV stations rather than just one. And censorship strangely remains the same, with the code still intact, even though they made some changes in terms of the mechanism, with the appeal mechanism for the filmmakers if they are not satisfied with the decision from the Film Censorship Board. And also another change is they can also do the cutting themselves rather than the film being cut by the censorship board. And now we have the 700 to 600 movie houses rather than 3,000 in the old days, because of the economic situation that demands the cinema to be modernized and gentrified, and little by little it's getting less and less, because small movie houses in towns is no longer feasible in business, so they have to join the conglomerates of the movie houses. And the media policy are scattered, and we have new channel in distribution, film festivals, not only for distribution but also in nurturing talents, because within the festival usually some activists also conduct some workshops to nurture talents, new talents. And they are booming in independent film production, which come along with the DIY culture, including, of course, documentary films. Well, basically this happens in 1999 to 2000 with the digital equipment, and Indonesians also very, very adaptive towards the new technology. And they changed the tools to digital equipment, and the products just flood to the market. In post-1998, despite all the changes that I mentioned in media environment, documentary films in Indonesia remains in a marginal position, because nobody really see in the market potentials of documentary films. As entertainment, it's also considered to be boring, to be less attractive compared to fiction films. And I think it's important it's also important how Indonesians see documentary film, which I found some sort of resonance in Michael Channon's assertions on documentary film as a documentary. Documentary is a battleground of social and historical truth, and this is one of the main reasons why people make them. So during my preliminary research to some documentary filmmakers, they see documentary film as something that they use to challenge the reality and to propose their versions of truth. And I think regardless of the production mode and whatever they use, most of the filmmakers see themselves as someone who carries this mission against the backdrop of the changing situation in Indonesia. Now, compared to the previous era in the before 1998, the production aspect of documentary film changed drastically. We still have the state film company to produce documentaries. One of them is Aroma Kopi. It won an award in one of the festivals, and TPRI is still producing documentaries as well. But the one who's been really taking over the state role in producing documentary is NGO. It's non-government organizations such as TIPA Foundation, POC Foundations, and many other NGOs. And there are also some quasi-government institutions. They commission some filmmakers to produce documentaries, such as the Human Rights Commissions. Film schools still active in producing documentary film. And private TV stations, they also jump in. Since 2002, they're allowed to produce news. Well, I think it's even before that, but it's 2002. The government issued a decree that they are allowed to produce news and current affairs. And private TV stations, even though they're not really keen on making documentaries as the main attraction, but they're still producing it. And film community. Many film communities, as I mentioned earlier about the DIY culture and this people who really loves watching films. They try to make films themselves and they start to make films their own. Which one of them, maybe one of the most important community is the cinema lovers community in district of Purbalingga, population 1 million something. They try to really make documentary film as something meaningful in terms of the against the establishment. This is one of their tweets. I capture it. As you can see, the text: before the historical building of Kalibagor Sugar Factory totally flattened to the ground, film it. They really have the ethos of being the alternative towards the establishment. They even have this romantic feeling about the function of camera as a resistance tool. And they have their own festival, which already in the 11th year this year, 11th edition, still running up to now, and they use very modest equipment. Like they have the layar tancap, where they have stick, they have a pole mast stick to the ground, and then they just erect the screen, and then they use overhead projector, such as that one. Very modest equipment. And the production model, in the production model we have the private in-house production from the TV stations, Metro TV, Kompas TV, one of the few TVs that are still producing documentary up to now, and some TV commissioning. Watchdog is an organization, is an NGO, and they also have the commercial wings in the NGO to take the work from Kompas TV to produce some documentary. And NGO commissioning as well, it's one of the reasons, the blossoming of documentary films nowadays. And the workshop with TV stations, Eagle Award, which started in 2002, one of the biggest and most influential documentary films nowadays, because they have a very high profile awarding ceremony, and they work with some celebrities. They really try to make it into a national movement to use documentary as also I have to mention that Eagle Award is established by Metro TV, so it's linked to the TV stations. I already mentioned NGO commissioning, but they also hold workshops. They work with some international NGOs and also some commercial entities, nurturing filmmakers, especially novice and young filmmakers, aspiring filmmakers, to submit their project, and then they work together to develop it. One of the most influential one is the Project Change with Kalyana Sira. And small scale enterprise, I will discuss about this later. And also there are some transnational production, Leonel Helmrich trilogy. Daniel Zev is a Canadian, making Jalanan, the stories about 3 street buskers. And of course, Joshua Oppenheimer's The Act of Killing. I don't really want to talk about this because we have talked about this film so many times. Also public funding nowadays, governments start to pour some money, even though not really big, and they put this public funding together with, this is the endowment from the government on some projects. It's documentary film and short films together being funded by the government, if you're lucky, after. Yes. and also foreign funding. And this become very interesting part because nowadays Indonesian filmmakers are more international savvy. They know the market nowadays compared to back in 1990s. They know there are some money in Busan, in Korea, in Leipzig, in New York, Copenhagen, in Sheffield as well. They try to submit their project and go with the funding market. And this is one of the examples of the NGO commissioning film. And I would like to cite the Makbul Mubarak, one of the most prominent film critics nowadays in Indonesia. Hundreds of Indonesian documentary filmmakers, professional and amateurs alike, have produced their projects within a framework of issues that are the path course of specific NGOs such as environmental conversation. And this one is about domestic violence, memory and hope. And I'll talk about the small-scale enterprise, and I will like to single out Tony Trimarsanto. Actually, I think he's the first one who has this kind of production models, which he constantly producing documentary film as his main work, as his main job. He doesn't really have anything else other than making documentary film, and he's selling it through the online platform. You cannot really think about the online platform in the UK. And basically he sells DVD of his films, not online streaming because the infrastructure is not really good, and people also don't really trust the online transaction. So it's like he just used his website and Facebook account to sell to promote and sell the films, and then he will send the DVD. He print the DVD himself, and also put it in the envelope and send it to you if you want to buy it. And he's also have the international distribution. Recently, 4 films are in distribution contract for 5 years, and he can earn $2,000 per year for this from these 4 films, and he said that's not bad, for doing things for full time. And now some distributors, some producers help him, working with him in some project, including trying to get international fundings. And the format, we still talk about the same thing, similar to the New Order model. Voice-over narrator exoticize Indonesia and its people, especially the one that produced by the state film company. Activism and campaign material inciting awareness on certain social and political issues, where the screening is sometimes followed by the discussion. And most of the time it becomes an issue for the filmmakers of creative freedom, because they think they have to come with the term set by the NGO rather than their own willing. I mentioned Eagle Award, and they're really strong in broadcast format. Inspirational stories, which they try to incite the stories about other people's struggling and take life lesson from it. Mostly overtly dramatized scenes and music. Voice-over model as well. But sometimes there are also the investigative and hard-hitting and in-depth journalism, mostly by Watchdog, which is very active in producing documentary films nowadays. Observational documentaries, starting in 2006, I think, with Lucas Moment, made by Ariel Danusiri, who is now studying in Harvard as an anthropologist. Personal note, Akar, which I think will be screened, I don't know, if we have time. And experimental documentaries, coming from independent filmmakers. This is one of the example of the experimental documentary, 17,000 Islands by Edwin and Norwegian filmmaker Thomas Oisby. It's an interactive documentary. You can see the website, 17,000 Island, based on the miniature of Indonesia that's produced by Suharto regime in Taman Mini Indonesia Indah, 17,000 Islands, and it's part of the Indonesian national culture. They want to challenge this. They said the image of Indonesia, it's not set, it's not stable. Rather, it's they want to challenge it, and we want the audience to make their own pictures of Indonesia, make your own island from the footages they provide there. It's very interesting. It's very interesting project, and it's still going until now. I think it was released in 3 years ago already. I don't know how far it reached Indonesian audience, but it's a very interesting concept. And the circulation, I mentioned about the festivals and private stations, international festival. Indonesian filmmakers are really aware of the existence of international festivals, and they take advantage from it because they know it's difficult to rely on the domestic market, so international festivals is their main stage. And major cinema, some cinemas also screen Indonesian documentary. Indonesian Student Movement 1998 is a record-breaking documentary in many aspects. It's the first Indonesian documentary to be screened in Indonesian cinema in the history of the nation. And the duration is 43 minutes. It's even less than a feature-length presentation. So, but he managed the filmmaker managed to get the deal with the major cinema. There's a long story behind it. The JAG, it's about the football hooligans. Conductors, it's a combination between the football hooligans and one of the famous Indonesian conductors, Adi. I forgot. Adi. Who? Adi who?
MS.
Yeah, Adi MS. Yeah, Adi MS. Yeah, it's sorry. And Pertaruhan, or At Stake, it's from the Project Change that I mentioned earlier. And alternative spaces, film clubs, universities, galleries, NGO, film communities, they tend to screen it there. And online platform, YouTube, and recently Fitsi. Fitsi is very good resource for you if you're studying Indonesian or Southeast Asian subject, because it's like online platform, it's like YouTube, but mainly short and documentary films from Southeast Asia, and the curation is just perfect. It's you have to take a look. Well, I'm not linked to Fitsi at all, but I think it's worth the experience. I want to close it with one of the experimental documentary from Aryo Danusiri, which I think encapsulates the creative force behind the documentary film making in Indonesia. It's not only about the filmmakers but also about the subject. How the subject is very, very interesting in Indonesia nowadays for the documentary films to just get the camera out and record them. And this is one of the examples of how the energy is there. This film is made in 2013, recorded. He records this crowd who gathers in Merdeka Square in Jakarta. They gather there on monthly basis to listen to a sermon from Islamic scholars. And Danusiri's subject is actually about Islam and urban mobility in Indonesia. That's his subject for his PhD project in Harvard, and he also made this documentary as part of his work. What he does is just get the camera out and record them making a scene by themselves. Let me play it for you. It's an excerpt, like 40 seconds. that's the documentary and also my presentation. Thank you very much.